into the cloud. Okay, so I want to spend some time to discuss Jenkinsfile Runner experiences and what would be the roadmap for the project. So I believe that Levi has some experience with Jenkinsfile Runner. What about you, Martin?
No, I don't have experience. I tried it long time ago, not recently.
There were some updates recently, but in principle, it remains the same. It's a tool that takes Jenkins file and some configuration, executes this Jenkins file and returns results. So basically, it's quite straightforward. There was some evolution in the recent months, and you can see that there is now version 1.0 beta 30, and I still do not hurry with 1.0 release. But yeah, I want to eventually land it. So there are a few items which are currently on the roadmap. So the current state that it works pretty well. There were some packaging tools introduced that actually allow to package Jenkinsfile Runner easily as Java application in a more efficient way. I still have some items in my backlog, for example, even Quarkus built-in time initialization and other things which would make it even more performant. But currently, performance is not the biggest concern. It's fast enough. So for me, the biggest problem is what user experience we want to deliver before the 1.0 release. This one, I would appreciate feedback, especially from you, Levi, since you use it. So I lined out a few topics which I would like to finalize. So first of all, I want to have Java 17 preview for 1.0, maybe even before, so that ensure that there is no breaking changes needed. Also, we are closing up interactive UI capabilities so that you can start up Jenkinsfile Runner in the UI mode on demand and browse what happens there. Then I want to finalize custom work packager. So it's the original tool which was created for Jenkinsfile Runner packaging. I kind of abandoned it for a while because I created new Java-based packaging. But this Java-based packaging is quite complicated, especially for non-Java developers. And also it doesn't use some tricks which could be used elsewhere. So I want to release custom work packager 2.0, which actually supports new packaging formats for Jenkinsfile Runner, so that you can define Jenkinsfile Runner as YAML. And I'm about simplifying this file so that I will drop group IDs everywhere. So they will be on the artifact IDs or plugin IDs, and the code will be much more simple for common cases. Then yeah, build time initialization, maybe not for 1.0 actually. Also, I need to finish packaging because currently packaging relies on Docker Hub and it became a bloody mess, which actually just needs to be rewritten so that either release Jenkins is used or GitHub actions to be defined. I also want to have support for Tecton out of the box and for GitHub action, but GitHub actions may come later because right now I still cannot work on that. And another topic which I already started and finished is JBank integration. So if you're not familiar, JBank is a CLI tool which can execute Java as script, and it has a lot of enhancements. So probably we could execute Jenkins file as script using this engine without standalone tools, so that everyone who uses JBank, they could use Jenkinsfile Runner out of the box. So this is what I have on short-term roadmap. Also abandoning Java 8, it's a wide open topic. I'm so tempted to do that. At the same time, there is no particular technical justification to do it right now, because Jenkinsfile Runner code base is relatively simple. But if I want to adopt Quarkus, I will actually need to abandon Java 8 because Quarkus 2.0 supports on Java 11. So, and there is no point in using Java Quarkus 1 to have temporary support for Java 8. So it's one of the reasons why I might drop it. So this is what I have on my roadmap, but I do not have much feature-wise because yeah, there is quite a long list of items. Some items, yeah, thanks to Levy, I actually still need to process all of them. Some of them they actually addressed, but they would benefit from better user experience. So, for example, yeah, pipeline library management, it could have be done much easier with Jenkinsfile Runner, and the same for other components. So, I think that we could optimize it a lot. So that's why I would appreciate feedback, so that we can see what needs to be prioritized. Levi, what do you think? What would be the top items for you? And
for me,
Mhm.
yeah, I think what the Jenkinsfile Runner is it almost 3 years old now?
Yes, something like that, but it has a long history because, well, there were gaps in development
Sure.
related to some non-technical reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost 3 years old.
Yeah, I think it was almost 3 years ago that I found it by accident. I think the most challenging part is if you are not if you don't have a Java background, or if you're not intimate with Jenkins, it can be hard to set up from scratch. You know, Jenkins is a very customized tool. Everyone's version of Jenkins is different because of the plugins and how they bring it up, you know, whether they're configuring it with Jenkins configuration as code, or maybe they're using custom Groovy scripts. And so in order to use Jenkinsfile Runner, you almost always have to customize it for your liking. And as of right now, you know, you're going to have to know some Java stuff. Like you were talking about the packaging, that's kind of a Java thing. You know, setting up the Jenkins war is kind of a Java thing. And that's where I've always struggled with getting it to run. So I've never been able to do it on my own. Instead, I find someone else that's done it and how they did it, and then I kind of modify what they did to work for me. And what I think would really help, and I created an issue the other night inside of that repo, is if there was an example for using the Jenkinsfile Runner that was based on the community Docker image. Because I feel like a lot of people use the community Docker image. They already have documentation on how to install plugins and set up things like that. And then all the JFR repo would have to do is probably give, you know, like a Docker file that started with the community image. So from Jenkins LTS, and then provide 3 or 4 lines to execute to install the JFR binary into that, into that, and then have that pre-configured to use the existing Jenkins installation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people are using that image for production. And so if they could take that production Docker image and put JFR into it very easily, they would have something they could use in CI/CD. That's exactly what they're running in production now.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. And yeah, basically Jenkinsfile Runner started like that. I deviated back to Java development flow because I wanted to just optimize speed and size of images. And I've been quite successful with that. I was able to reduce the Jenkinsfile Runner size maybe from 400 megabytes containers to 120 megabytes container by now as minimum. But you're right that now we should circle back and to provide better experience. Did you have a chance to take a look at the custom work packager?
I have looked extensively at all the documentation pages in that repo. I did take a look at it. I don't remember exactly what it says. It was a year ago. But that kind of stuff tends to go over my head.
Okay. Yeah, so it started as a development tool. It has a lot of stuff that is not really related to Jenkinsfile Runner. So at some point I was thinking whether I just drop it completely and build a new tool. Then I ended up basically, instead of a tool, building proper packaging form, which you can extend. But yeah, I think that we will still need a separate CLI, because custom work packager is not very good for Jenkinsfile Runner as is. It has a lot of steps and that are designed for classic Word files, so that yeah, it seems a bit overcomplicated. Yeah, for example, here's an example for Jenkinsfile Runner packaging, and it looks like that right now. So a lot of optimizations could be done.
And so what's this doing? It's bundling the plugins into the Jenkins War?
Actually more, because what it does, it bundles plugins, it bundles configuration as called Groovy hooks, it sets up system properties. Everything is packaged, so yeah, it's redistributable. Also, it can build components on demand, and it can override libraries. So, for example, for Jenkins Word file, it can insert additional libraries like newer version of remoting, or maybe just a client library, like let's say Java agent and whatever, which is not available by default. It has a lot of added features, but you're basically just taking everything and building a single image. The most important part is actually here, it's also pre-initialization. So you can define it here as well, either as files or even in the same file. But in the same file, you don't get syntax validation. So in my case, I finally opted out to having a separate initialization and Cask scripts.
So is this like a way to define your Jenkins as code, but instead of getting a Docker file out of it, you're getting the actual Jenkins binary, so to say?
Yeah, so it actually can produce Docker file as well, but it also can produce Jenkins Word file. Why it was done? Historically, custom work packager was created for testing purposes. So we have frameworks like Jenkins Test Harness, which take Word file and test plugins against that. And I wanted to test features like pluggable storage. So for example, Artifact Manager is 3 plugin. When you run a unit test, for example, for Jenkins core, but add additional plugin and override configuration so that you can test this pluggable storage behavior with existing test suites. So that's why this custom work packager was initially created, and it generates a Word file with all the settings and configurations inside it, which is quite cozy. But yeah, it can also use a Docker image for you. Though for Docker image, you can achieve the same without a custom work packager.
Yeah, now that I kind of know more about what it does, it seemed to be extremely useful. My only feedback would be not only allowing the plugins as YAML, but maybe allowing a second configuration option where you point to some kind of existing, I'm not even sure the name of the file, but be able to define your dependencies in a way that Dependabot can modify. So whether that
it's supported. So for example, there is CI Jenkinsfile Runner. It's simulation of CI Jenkins.io. You can see there is Dependabot and how it's defined. There is POM XML. This POM XML, you can see it's quite long. It uses Jenkins bill of materials, which was briefly pitched by Mark today. So you can see that some plugins don't have versions because they actually come from external definition. And what happens next here is that, there is also configuration as code. And then all the packaging, well, now it doesn't even use custom word packager because it uses Jenkins parent form. But before that, it was taken from XML with custom word packager. There was an option for that. So sorry if I confused you. I just took a time machine. So the version I had here, it takes basically build settings, and it includes POM from which you get plugins and the Word file. So you can see that the format is not that obvious because it was well, basically created quickly just to get things integrated. That's why I started to do zero to rework it, but I have now finished it. But yeah, you can use dependabot.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big deal. Getting the dependabot help and maintaining your Jenkins. I mean, the Jenkins community image is great. But yeah, I feel like this would be better if you were going to have a complete pipeline to deploy your Jenkins, and especially if you were both doing it for your Jenkins production and your JFR. You really get, the advantage using the custom word packager.
Yeah, so Jenkins Runner build flow produces both. So it produces Word file and it produces Jenkinsfile Runner. But yeah, currently it always packages Jenkinsfile Runner into the Docker image. Though technically it's possible to create a binary, I just didn't support it in custom word packager. And maybe I will do it later, but let's see. Right now, I still need to finish all this packaging for newer versions of Jenkinsfile Runner, which we reworked.
In the spirit of JCS, what needs the most contributing?
Well, currently, so custom word packager, maybe it makes sense to rewrite it completely. Because currently it's designed for multiple cases. Maybe it's better to create just separate Jenkinsfile Runner packager and simplify the logic. And if you're not up to that, just making some incremental changes would be super useful. So, for example, just getting rid of group IDs, which is straightforward. And maybe adding some just verification flows for new versions of Jenkinsfile Runner and Jenkins, because this toolchain was created 2 years ago and now it's a bit dated. So upgrading everything, also migrating it to Pika CLI. I believe there is a task for that. If not, it should exist. Because I think that current CLI is also not good. So current CLI is very simple, but maybe it makes sense to implement separate commands so that it's easier to manage. Maybe even by moving some options from YAML to just CLI. So if you're interested to take a look at that, just try. It should be operational. But actually I wanted to work a lot of the things here. Just have never got to it.
Yeah, I'm a bit green when it comes to Java packaging. I don't know if I could rewrite this from scratch, but if
you don't want to touch it, don't, because you can leave it to somebody else. There are some other use cases we could do. For example, there is GitHub action which needs to be finalized. So it was created by Johannes Nikolai, but yeah, right now it's rather stale. So it needs a serious update, but it's generally a nice prototype, and it would be nice to adapt it to the new tooling. Also, there are image packs, and the image packs, well, I was able to just add one image because then, due to, again, non-technical reasons, I was unable to proceed with this repository. But if you're interested, you can create more image packs, and they look like that. So there is, for example, just Jenkins YAML, which is really simple. It's for configuration as code. There is POM XML, which basically defines the build. You can see that there is a bunch of plugins, and again, here many things could be optimized. And then basically there is Docker file. So creating a few extra images for other tool chains would be definitely cool. So if you're interested, yeah, it's one of the options you can start from. Actually. So what I would like to see is Gradle, is something for Node.js development, something for Python. So basically, any standard flow you're interested in, please feel free to submit an image.
Gotcha. And so an image pack is, you're saying, kind of like a Jenkins or a JFR in particular, and it has just the kind of common plugins for that language?
Not only plugins, because it also includes tools. So for example, for Maven, what you actually get a local installation of Maven on your image. So Jenkinsfile Runner can run on agents, so it can connect agents as well. But in majority of use cases, you can also run locally. So this image is designed for local run. So basically, you run on the controller, which is a massive anti-pattern for other Jenkins use cases, but here it's okay. So here, it embeds not only plugins, but also required tools and configurations for them. So for example, here, there is Jenkins YAML. It initializes Git, JDK 8, and Maven tool. So you get them out of the box. Makes sense?
Yep.
Yeah, so again, a lot needs to be done. So ideally, I want to have Jenkins YAML integrated with system definition into a single file. Dependabot, of course, I want to have it, because even with it, it's a nightmare to maintain. And yeah, you also need a lot more test automation for that, because I still haven't finished new version of Jenkinsfile Runner test harness. There is one which was created by Evariste and Francisco from CloudBees. It's available, but it's based on SH Unit 2, and yeah, it's a bit heavy because it needs Docker, etc. So right now, I wouldn't say that this test framework is what I would recommend for production use. But yeah, it would definitely benefit if somebody takes it over and refreshes it.
The other kind of general question I had around the Jenkinsfile Runner is, I use it, I tend to execute, I have it run about 15 to 20 jobs back to back to back. But even when I keep the container running, and I'm just calling, the JFR command line executable, it seems like the Jenkins internally is restarting in between runs. And so it's doing things like, the startup initialization and things like that. Is there a way to like put JFR in like a daemon mode?
Yes, it's possible. So actually one pull request which makes it fancy is pending. So once, so Roman Svoboda, Rostislav Svoboda from Red Hat, he submitted option to keep Jenkinsfile Runner running without hacks like sleep. And once it's ready, you just get Jenkinsfile Runner with web interface. Once you set up open web UI and wait an exit option. Also, you can start up in the CLI mode. And if you start in the CLI mode, then you can basically interact with instance like with classic CLI. So you can initialize multiple jobs, trigger them, including in parallel, and collect results. I would just say that the user experience for these cases is not perfect because Jenkinsfile Runner as console app is not designed for parallel jobs usage, but in principle you can do that. I can probably show it.
Said it was designed for what usage?
For sequential usage. So when you run Jenkinsfile Runner in console and it just executes one pipeline.
Yeah. So I'm going to call it sequentially. I just don't want to pay that startup tax. Like if I'm pulling down, like configuring the shared library over and over again, every time you run a job.
Well, it's not a huge deal actually, time-wise, but yes, for that currently you can keep it running. And yeah, also I started working on initialization with Quarkus, so that the initialization time would drop from a few seconds to about 1 second. So it's also something on my roadmap.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I want to do many things around there. Let's see how many things I actually will be able to do. But yeah, Jenkinsfile Runner is quite flexible and more options could be added. So if you're missing something, just submit a GitHub issue like you already did. And yeah, I promise that I will process the current backlog. And yeah, if you just want to adjust execution, it's super straightforward. Yeah, there are 3 levels of execution, but once you get familiarized with the code, yeah, you just get it running. So actually, yeah, there is a bunch of directories there, but yeah, there are just 3 companies which matter: app, bootstrap, and setup for common development. The rest are the utilities, developer tools, etc. And later I will be probably regrouping it into a separate repository, or maybe even into a separate GitHub organization, but yeah, likely just a separate repository.
Cool.
Yeah. So any questions, comments? So yeah, if you want to try it out, Martin, any feedback will be appreciated. I think that there will be new release definitely in the coming weeks because I want to release scale changes, and I want to finally unblock Docker images. So there will be some changes.
I'm going to have to try it again. It's been a very long time since I used the Jenkinsfile Runner.
I know, but well, it's up to you whether when you actually need it, then please try it out, and yeah, any feedback will be appreciated. Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So should we close down then?
Yeah, it's been a
Or
long
do we?
day. It's been a long day for us.
Okay. I think that we don't host after party because yeah, people almost disappeared. So yeah,
The last two sessions was the after party.
Okay. So then no after party, and yeah, thanks everyone. I will follow up in the mailing list, and I will try to publish all the videos tomorrow or on Monday the latest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.